I am David Harper, 45 years old, head of product development at Apex Innovations, a tech company in Seattle, Washington. Tonight, at the company's year-end party, I walked into the conference hall with a faint sense of anticipation. In my vest pocket, I carried a folded piece of paper, hastily written at midnight. A short speech, thanking the company for 15 years of dedication. It wasn't about showing off. I thought this was a chance to express gratitude, to mend the invisible cracks in my heart. I've devoted my entire career to Apex. From sleepless nights, saving the Alpha project to the time I spent $90,000 from my personal account to pay off a supplier's debt. I thought, maybe, tonight would be a meaningful moment. The hall was ablaze with LED lights, large glass panels reflecting the Apex logo on a massive screen. The long banquet table was covered with a white cloth, neatly arranged with acrylic name tags, next to plates of grilled meat and red wine glasses. The smell of coffee mingled with the scent of pine from a decorative tree, almost like a Christmas atmosphere but colder. As if Seattle were trying to soften the chill outside. I pulled my document suitcase, weaving through the crowd of colleagues laughing and talking. They brushed past me, their eyes briefly avoiding mine. I looked for my seat, but couldn't find my name tag. "David," said Susan Carter, a longtime shareholder, her voice as flat as the air. No hug, no smile, just my name dry and curt. "Michael said you'd prefer the corner for comfort." She pointed to a folding plastic chair by the food cabinet. No name tag, no wine glass, just an empty space. I pulled the chair closer to the table, gently to avoid attention, but Michael Vaughn, the CEO, 52 years old, noticed. He laughed loudly, his mocking voice booming through the microphone. "Oh, David always likes to keep a low profile, doesn't he, buddy?" Everyone laughed along, even James Carter, the project manager who used to pat my shoulder after drinks. I forced a smile, hiding it behind clenched teeth. The plastic chair creaked under me, as if it weren't just temporary, but a declaration. You don't belong here.
Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest video.
The party began with office stories, wine glasses passing hands, and glances that skimmed over me, as if I were an extra table. I focused on the center of the table, where a crystal Apex statue stood, a gift I had proposed for the company's 10-year anniversary. When the speeches started, James stood up, raising his glass, his confident talk filled with jokes that made the room roar with laughter. I stood up, intending to say a few words, my hand gripping the microphone on the table. It didn't work. I tapped it lightly, flipped the switch, still silent. Michael leaned in, feigning concern. "Oh no, the battery must be dead." "Guess it's not your moment, David." Laughter erupted, this time more awkward. I folded my speech paper, slipped it into my pocket, and sat down. My wine glass had been taken by someone. When the awards segment began, I hoped my name would be mentioned for the Alpha project. I had stayed up 3 nights to complete the report that saved it, had spent $90,000 of my own money. Susan opened an award envelope, her voice trembling. "Truly remarkable, Michael, you made a miracle with Alpha." Michael laughed heartily, basking in the spotlight. "Just an idea that hit me last week," he said, without hesitation. I froze. That report was mine. No one noticed, or if they did, they stayed silent. James glanced at me, his eyes fleeting, then turned away. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to tell myself the award didn't matter, that my intentions were bigger than applause. I recalled the times my name was left off reports, the time I was overlooked for a promotion, the time Michael took my idea. This wasn't accidental, it was a campaign. I looked at Susan, whom I once saw as a mentor, but she only stared at her wine glass, as if it were more interesting than me. Then, as dessert was served, apple pie and coffee, Michael stood up, tapping his glass. "Before we continue, there's something we need to address," he said, his voice sweet but razor sharp. All eyes turned to him, then slowly shifted to me. I felt the trap. "Give back the $90,000, David, or you won't see this office again." The room froze. Sarah, sitting nearby, dropped her spoon, eyes wide. James cleared his throat, head bowed. I turned to Susan, hoping she'd say something, but she just looked at her napkin, folding it neatly, as if that were the most important task. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice soft as a whisper. James chimed in, his tone rigid. You transferred money from the Alpha Fund. David. We saw the report. I gripped the table's edge, my voice breaking but calm. I used my own money, not the company's fund. Michael smirked, leaning back in his chair. Then why no receipt? Why does the report show you withdrew from the shared account? I opened my mouth but stopped. Because he was right, there was no receipt. Michael had asked me to keep it secret, saying the company didn't want to publicize the debt. I had paid from my personal account, no paperwork, just a promise. And now, my word was worthless. Did you all plan this? I asked, my voice low but sharp. We just wanted the truth, James said, shaking his head as if I were to blame. Sarah whispered, almost inaudible. They said you stole. I turned to Susan again, desperate, hoping she'd stand up. Stop it, David didn't do that. But she just folded her napkin, placed it beside her untouched plate. That was my answer. I quietly pulled my phone from my pocket, placed it on the table, and said no more. In my heart, I knew they had staged a play, but I wouldn't let them rewrite my story. The year-end party continued as if nothing had happened. Laughter rang out, wine glasses clinked, and the LED screen's light flickered on everyone's faces, as if hiding the stifling atmosphere that had just unfolded. I, David Harper, still sat on the folding plastic chair in the corner, my hand clutching the phone, feeling it was the only thing keeping me from sinking into the void widening in my chest. I tried to blend in, but every forced smile, every polite nod from colleagues, only made it clearer. I didn't belong here. Not anymore. Michael Vaughn stood at the head of the table, leading the party with unshaken confidence. He told a story about the Alpha Project, the one I had sweated and spent personal funds to save, but my name wasn't mentioned. Instead, everyone clapped as Michael took credit, as if he were the sole hero. I looked around, searching for a friendly glance, but found only faces avoiding me. James Carter, whom I once saw as a brother, stared down at his apple pie. Susan Carter, whom I respected as a mentor, sipped her wine, her gaze passing over me like I was a shadow. Sarah Nyan, the intern sitting a few seats away, looked at me with a mix of curiosity and unease. Mr. Harper, she whispered, soft enough that no one else heard. Is it true you took the money? They said so in the break room. Her words were like a knife, not because I was angry at her. Sarah was just a young girl, new to the company, easily swept up in whispers, but because I realized the rumors had spread further than I thought. No, Sarah, I replied, my voice low but firm. I didn't take anything. She nodded, but her eyes wavered, as if she wanted to believe but didn't dare. I stood up, intending to leave, but Sarah lightly tugged my sleeve. Mr. Harper, she whispered, her voice trembling. I heard them say you used to take credit from others. But I don't believe it. I just don't know. Her words were the drop that overflowed the cup. Not because she doubted me, but because I realized even an intern had been drawn into this false narrative. Thank you, Sarah, I said, keeping my voice calm. But maybe you should ask Michael what the truth is. She nodded, then turned away as Michael called her to help serve dessert. I stood up, quietly leaving the hall, not looking back. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses followed me like a shadow. I paused in the hallway, Seattle's dim streetlights filtering through the glass. My hand still gripped the phone, like a final tether to the truth. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew one thing. I had sacrificed too much for Apex, and if they thought I'd stay silent, they were wrong. Michael Vaughn's accusation, that I had embezzled $90,000 from the Alpha Project Fund, wasn't just a charge. It was a calculated blow, and the silence of everyone, from Susan Carter to James Carter, was proof they had known beforehand. I returned home, to our suburban house with a porch overlooking Puget Sound. Emily, my wife, was at the dining table, her eyes worried as she saw me return early. What's wrong, David? She asked, her voice trembling. People are saying something about you on the company's internal network. I didn't answer right away, just sat down and opened my laptop. Ethan, our 17-year-old son, was upstairs, but I knew he'd heard the rumors from friends. I didn't want to face his question. Dad, did you do something wrong? Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't yet have a convincing enough answer to defend myself. I started checking company emails, an old habit from late-night work sessions. I wasn't expecting to find anything specific, just wanted to do something to keep my mind from drowning in the spiral of hurt. But then, in the drafts folder of the shared account Susan Carter, a longtime Apex shareholder, often used, I found an unsent email, dated 6 months ago. Subject, regarding the Alpha Project. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the keyboard, as if opening it would confirm something I wasn't ready to believe. Then I clicked. Susan's words appeared on the screen. Concise, unembellished, just like her, times New Roman size 12. David used his personal funds to pay the Alpha Project supplier. I know this, but I can't tell Michael. He won't handle the truth, and the company doesn't need more trouble. I read it again, then again. Each time, a line stabbed deeper. She knew. She had known I spent $90,000 from my personal account to save the project when the company was nearly bankrupt due to a supplier's threat to sue. She knew, but she chose silence, letting Michael craft the story that I was an embezzler. I recalled that day, nearly 3 years ago. Michael called me into his office, his voice tense. David, we don't have enough to pay the supplier. If they pull out, the Alpha Project collapses, and the whole company will be in trouble. Got any solutions? I didn't hesitate. I transferred $90,000 from my savings account, money I'd set aside for Ethan's college tuition. Michael patted my shoulder, saying, "Keep it quiet, David. The company will repay you. No receipt, no paperwork, just a promise." I trusted him. And now, that promise had become a noose. I closed the laptop. I needed space to breathe, to think. I stepped onto the porch, gazing at Puget Sound, shimmering under the moonlight. The sting of betrayal wasn't new. I remembered the time I proposed a restructuring strategy for Apex, only to see Michael present it at a board meeting without mentioning my name. The time I worked 3 weeks straight to finish the report that saved the Alpha Project. But James was honored for innovation. The pieces started to fit together. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was a deliberate campaign to erase my name from the company's history. The next day, I returned to the office early. Before sunrise, I needed more clues, anything to understand why Susan stayed silent, why James joined in accusing me. I entered the meeting room, still bearing traces of the year-end party, a few abandoned wine glasses, a name tag fallen on the floor. I opened the shared meeting room computer, where Susan often checked emails. In the sent folder, I found an email from her to James, dated a week before the party. "Don't let David know about the board meeting," she wrote. "Michael said he doesn't need to be there." A sharp pain shot through my chest. I had never been invited to that meeting, even though I prepared the report. I texted James, not expecting an honest reply, but I had to try. "James, we need to talk about Alpha. You know the truth, don't you?" The message showed, "Read," but no response came. I reopened Susan's email, reading it again, as if it could reveal something more. "David did everything for the company," she wrote. "But Michael doesn't want anyone to know." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Susan didn't just know. She had chosen to side with Michael, to protect his narrative, to keep Apex's image polished. I heard footsteps. Sarah Nguyen appeared at the meeting room door, holding a coffee cup, her eyes uneasy. "Mr. Harper, I didn't mean to ask that last night," she said, her voice low. "But they said you took the money, and I just wanted to understand." I looked at her, a young woman full of enthusiasm, caught up in the company's toxic whispers. "Sarah," I said, my voice calm, "have you ever considered that what they say might not be true?" She blinked, not answering, but her eyes told me. She wanted to believe me. But she was afraid. Returning to Apex's office in Seattle, I tried to maintain a normal appearance. But the atmosphere had changed. Colleagues who once patted my shoulder in the break room now avoided my gaze. An anonymous post on the company's internal network spread rapidly, titled, "The Truth About the Alpha Project." It called me an embezzler, and someone who always takes credit from others. I opened the post on my phone, reading each venomous comment. I knew Harper was untrustworthy. No wonder he always worked alone. Each word was like a knife, not because they were true, but because they were written with the confidence of those who believed the lie. Emily, my wife, Called at noon, her voice trembling. David, the neighbors are starting to ask questions. They saw that post on social media, from someone you work with. I gripped the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. Don't worry, Em, I'll handle it. But after hanging up, I felt a new pressure. Ethan, our 17-year-old son, was about to take college entrance exams. I didn't want him to walk into school with whispers that his dad was a crook. I opened Ethan's text, a single short line. Dad, what's going on? I returned to the office, determined to find more clues. In an old drawer in the meeting room, where I'd left some personal documents, I found a small USB, faintly labeled, Alpha, Transactions. My heart raced. I plugged the USB into my laptop, my hands slightly trembling. Inside were bank transaction files, from 3 years ago, showing I had transferred $90,000 from my personal account to the Alpha Project supplier's account. Not the company's fund, not a shared account, but my money. I opened another file, a copy of an email exchange between me and Michael. He wrote, David, keep this payment quiet. The company doesn't want to publicize debts. I texted James Carter, who had joined in accusing me at the year-end party. James, we need to talk about Alpha. You know I didn't take company money. The message showed, read. But James didn't reply. I wasn't surprised. James had always been loyal to Michael, but I hoped he'd feel some remorse. I went back to Susan's email, rereading the line. David did everything for the company. If she knew, why didn't she speak up? Why did she let Michael turn me into a traitor in front of the entire company? I stepped into the hallway, needing air to breathe. Sarah Nyan, the intern, appeared from the break room, holding a coffee cup, her eyes uneasy. Harper, she said, her voice low, I heard Michael telling everyone last night that you wouldn't fight back, that you'd just walk away. She paused, as if afraid she'd said too much. I looked at her, trying to stay calm. What else did they say, Sarah? She bit her lip, then whispered, that you always take credit from others. But I don't believe it. I've seen how you work. You're not that kind of person. Her words were like a small ray of light in the darkness, but they also confirmed what I'd suspected. Michael wasn't just accusing me. He was rewriting my entire story at Apex. I checked more internal emails. One from Michael to the accounting team, dated before the year-end party, caught my attention. Double-check the Alpha account. Make sure the report shows Harper withdrew the money. My blood boiled. This wasn't a system error or a mistake. Michael had deliberately altered the report to frame me. I recalled other times when my idea was stolen by him in a meeting. When my report was edited to credit James. When I was excluded from the promotion list, despite saving the company from a costly lawsuit. The pieces fell into place, sharp and ruthless. This was a campaign, planned long ago. I returned home, bringing the USB and a copy of Michael's email. Emily was waiting at the dining table, her eyes full of worry. David, what are you going to do? She asked. I held her hand, trying to keep my voice steady. I'll find the truth, Em. I promise. The rumors on the company's internal network continued to spread, the vicious comments calling me an embezzler, now reaching beyond the office, to the ears of neighbors and Ethan's friends. Emily, my wife, tried to stay calm, but I saw her worry every time she looked at the upcoming college tuition bills for Ethan. David, what are you going to do? She asked, last night, her voice trembling. I just held her hand, saying, I'll handle it. But I knew, to handle it, I needed more than words. I texted Laura Bennett, a former audit lawyer I'd worked with on a financial project 5 years ago. Laura was sharp, unafraid to confront the powerful, and most importantly, she respected the truth. Laura, I need to meet. It might involve document fraud. Are you free after the holidays? Her reply came in less than a minute. Coffee or war room? Bring all the documents. I gave a faint smile. The first in days. Laura didn't make promises, but she was ready to listen. I began organizing the evidence. The bank transactions from the USB, Susan's draft email, Michael's internal email, and the forged signature analysis, all were arranged into a new folder on my laptop, named Alpha Truth. But I knew documents alone weren't enough. I needed something Michael couldn't deny. I reopened the USB folder, searching for any overlooked files. In a subfolder labeled Meeting Recordings, I found an audio file from 3 months ago, capturing a strategic meeting I'd accidentally recorded. I pressed play, and Michael's voice rang out, clear and smug. "David won't dare fight me. He's too quiet. He'll just walk away." I copied the recording to the Alpha Truth folder, along with a detailed note on its time and context. I texted Laura back. "Both coffee and war room. I'll bring everything." I didn't need a lawsuit right now, but I needed the truth to be acknowledged. I knew Michael would hold an urgent meeting, as he'd announced via email this morning, to confirm the accusations against me. It would be his stage, but I wouldn't let him perform alone. I prepared a summary of the evidence, printed it out, and tucked it into my briefcase. I checked my phone, ensuring the recording was backed up. I wasn't trembling, wasn't afraid. I was ready. I walked into Apex Innovations conference hall, where the tense year-end party had taken place just days ago. Today, there were no twinkling LED lights or the aroma of coffee, only the cold white light from the ceiling, and the heavy atmosphere of an urgent meeting. Michael Vaughn, the CEO, had summoned the board and key staff to confirm the accusation that I, David Harper, 45 years old, head of product development, had embezzled $90,000 from the Alpha Project Fund. But I didn't come here to be judged. I came to turn the tables. The hall was nearly identical to the party, but my folding plastic chair had been replaced with a standard office chair. Michael walked in, his tailored suit impeccable, his smile as confident as ever. He nodded to everyone, but his gaze lingered on me, sharp and calculating. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice booming through the microphone. "Today, we need to address a serious issue regarding Apex's financial transparency." Everyone fell silent, their eyes glancing at me before quickly looking away. Sarah Nemia, the intern, sat in the corner, clutching her notebook, her eyes anxious but holding a flicker of hope. James Carter, the project manager, kept his head down, avoiding eye contact. Susan Carter, the longtime shareholder, sat in the front row, folding a tissue, as if bracing for a battle she didn't want to fight. Michael began, his voice smooth as a rehearsed speech. "We have clear evidence that David Harper withdrew $90,000 from the Alpha Project Fund without reporting it. This is unacceptable behavior." He held up a financial report, Susan's signature glinting under the light. I knew that signature was forged, but I didn't speak, not yet. Michael continued. "We gave David a chance to explain, but he provided no receipts or evidence." I took a deep breath, stood up, and placed my hand lightly on the table. "I have evidence," I said, my voice calm but firm. All eyes turned to me, even Sarah's, who seemed to hold her breath. Michael smirked, as if I'd just walked into his trap. "What evidence, David? Don't waste everyone's time." I didn't answer immediately. I pulled out my phone, placed it on the table, and pressed play. Michael's voice rang out, clear and smug, from the recording 3 months ago. "David won't dare fight me. He's too quiet. He'll just walk away." The room froze. Sarah's eyes widened, her hand covering her mouth. James looked up, his face pale. Susan stopped folding her tissue, her gaze wavering. Michael froze, his smile vanishing like mist under sunlight. That's fabricated," he shouted, his voice breaking. But I didn't stop. I opened my briefcase, pulling out the printed bank transaction. "This is the transaction from my personal account, $90,000, paid to the Alpha Project supplier 3 years ago, when the company couldn't afford it. Michael asked me to keep it secret. No receipt needed." I handed the printout to the person nearest me, letting it pass around. I continued, my voice still calm. "This is Susan's draft email, confirming she knew I used my own money." I held up the printed email, the line "David did everything for the company," clearly visible. Susan bowed her head, silent. I turned to Michael. "And this is your email, instructing accounting to alter the report to frame me." I placed the printout on the table, my eyes locked on his. "As for Susan's signature on your report, it's forged." I compared it to an old contract. "They don't match." Michael opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked around seeking support, but no one responded. James cleared his throat, his voice trembling. I saw Michael alter the report. I didn't want to be part of it, but I didn't stop him. His words were like a stone breaking the still surface of a lake. Sarah, though, just an intern, stood up, her voice small but resolute. I believe Mr. Harper. He's not the person Michael says he is. She looked at me, her eyes full of determination, and I knew she was overcoming her own fear. Susan finally spoke, her voice hoarse. David, I knew you paid the money. I should have spoken up sooner. She paused, her eyes red, but I didn't need her apology. I just needed the truth to be spoken. I turned to Michael, now sitting down, his face pale. This isn't about money, I said, my voice low but sharp. This is about you trying to rewrite the truth, Michael, but I won't let you. The hall was silent, only the sound of breathing and rustling paper. A board member raised a hand. We need time to review. Michael, you're temporarily suspended until the audit is complete. Michael didn't protest, just nodded, his eyes empty. I gathered my documents, put my phone in my pocket, and walked out of the hall. No one spoke, no one followed me, but I didn't need them to. I had said what needed to be said. I stepped into the hallway, Seattle's dim streetlights filtering through the glass. I didn't feel victorious, didn't feel relieved. I felt only a clarity, as if I had crossed a threshold I couldn't return from. I thought of Emily, of Ethan, of Sarah, and of myself. I had fought not just for the truth, but for what I had given. And as I stepped outside, under the cold night sky, I knew I had taken back my story. Early in the morning, my phone buzzed, a call from Apex's HR department. Mr. Harper, we need you at the office immediately, said the manager, Anna, her voice tense. A new recording surfaced last night. It's sensitive, the legal team is reviewing it, but we need you to explain. I gripped the phone tightly, feeling like the floor beneath me was collapsing. What recording? I asked, my voice hoarse. Anna hesitated. Someone says it's you, talking about altering financial reports and hiding transactions. We need to meet today. I opened the email Anna sent, which included a link to the recording. I pressed play, and my voice, or something like it, rang out, cold and calculated. I altered the report. Hiding the transaction wasn't hard. They'll believe me. I paused, played it again. It was my voice, my tone, my cadence. But I had never said those words. Not like this. They were spliced together, meticulously and maliciously. I knew immediately. Michael, he was striking back, and he was playing dirty. I walked into the legal office, where Anna and two lawyers were waiting. David, Anna said, her voice gentle but strained, we need you to explain this recording. I looked her in the eye, my voice calm. That recording is fake. I have evidence. I handed over the USB and printed documents, explaining each detail, the transaction from my personal account, Susan's draft email, and Michael's email instructing the report's alteration. I pointed to the signature analysis. Susan's signature on Michael's report is forged. I compared it to an old contract. One lawyer nodded, taking notes. As for the recording, I continued, it's spliced. I have old meeting files to prove my voice was misused. I left the office, leaving everything with the legal team. I didn't know what they'd do, but I had done my part. Back home, I opened my laptop, starting to back up all the files, preparing for the next step. Then a knock came at the door. I opened it, and James Carter stood there, his coat soaked from Seattle's rain, his face weary as if he hadn't slept. David, he said, his voice raspy, I can't take it anymore. He held out a small USB, his hand trembling slightly. I found project files on Michael's computer. They include original audio from meetings you were in. He spliced them to make the fake recording. I looked at James, not taking the USB right away. Why didn't you stop him? I asked, my voice not loud but sharp. James lowered his head, his eyes avoiding mine. I didn't help him, but I didn't stop him either. I thought he'd just move on. I was wrong. I took the USB but said nothing more. Is it too late to fix this? He asked, his voice almost pleading. No, I replied, but you're not the one to fix it. I closed the door. No goodbye. That evening, I sent everything. James's USB, the transaction files, emails, signature analysis, and a copy of the original recording, to Laura Bennett, my lawyer. I also sent a copy to Apex's legal team, with a note about the origin of James's files. The next morning, Laura called. David, the legal team verified it. The recording is fake, with traces of digital editing. Your emails and transactions match the bank records. They're launching an internal audit, and Michael is suspended indefinitely. I nodded, though she couldn't see. Thanks, Laura, I said, my voice soft. That afternoon, Susan met me at a cafe by Puget Sound. She sat across from me, clutching her tea mug, her eyes red. David, I'm sorry, she said. I knew you were innocent, but I was afraid of stirring things up. I looked at her, not angry, just tired. You had your chance, Susan, I replied. Thanks for finally speaking. I stood up and left, needing no forgiveness. I didn't need it anymore. I returned home, finding Emily waiting at the dining table. They've cleared you, she said, her voice relieved. I held her hand, feeling a hint of peace for the first time in days. But I knew the story wasn't over. I had reclaimed the truth, but its cost was scars that wouldn't easily heal. A month passed since the urgent meeting at Apex Innovations. I started a training program on business ethics at Apex, focused on helping young employees like Sarah recognize and confront workplace manipulation. In each session, I asked them, what was taken from you without your consent? And every time, someone cried, not out of sadness, but because they realized they weren't alone. I didn't need a medal for this. I just needed to show up. Emily and Ethan returned to their normal rhythm. Ethan no longer avoided me. He even told me about his basketball tryouts at school, his eyes bright like before. Emily held my hand tighter each night, as if she knew we'd weathered a storm. I opened my laptop, finding a note I wrote after the urgent meeting. Your job doesn't define you. The truth you defend does. I saved it, not to show off, but to remind myself. I turned down a job offer from a rival company. I stayed at Apex, not out of loyalty, but because I wanted to build a fairer place, where no one had to sit on a folding plastic chair just to be forgotten. As the sunset faded, I stood up watching Sarah finish her final sketch in her notebook. I like it better here, she said, smiling. Me too, I replied, and for the first time, I truly meant it. The story of David Harper and my boss screamed, give back the $90K, or you'll be fired. I pulled out my phone, reflects the real challenges in today's U.S. workplace, where fierce competition, rapidly spreading rumors on internal networks, and loyalty are sometimes exploited. David, a 45-year-old veteran employee at Apex Innovations in Seattle, faces an embezzlement accusation from his boss, Michael Vaughn, who orchestrates a smear campaign to oust him. Details like David finding Susan Carter's draft email, the USB with bank transactions, and the fabricated recording reveal the complexity of workplace conspiracies, where truth can be distorted by power and ambition. David's journey, from isolation at the year-end party, where he was relegated to a folding plastic chair, to confronting Michael with evidence in the urgent meeting, mirrors the pressure to maintain reputation and self-worth in a society that values individual success, but often overlooks honesty. In the U.S. workplace, where competitive culture and internal social media can amplify rumors, like the post calling David an embezzler, defending the truth requires persistence and concrete evidence. Learn from David, keep records like his USB, build trusted relationships, like with Laura Bennett, and don't shy away from confronting injustice, as he did by playing the recording before the board. Moreover, David's business ethics training program suggests that positive change starts with inspiring others, as he did with Sarah. In real life, always prepare documentation, hold firm to your values, and turn challenges into opportunities for fairness, especially in a society that prioritizes efficiency, but sometimes forgets ethics. Subscribe to the channel to follow the journeys of truth defenders like David, and thank you for joining us. See you in the next video, where we'll explore more stories of perseverance and justice.